Listen, I've got something really interesting to show you, really interesting. And when I show you it in my hand, you'll think, what is she talking about? Because that just looks like a little piece of vegetation, doesn't it? But we've been finding these all over the reserve, and they're all sorts of different shapes, different patterns. We've been finding them in very different places. And I can tell you it's not just a piece of vegetation, it's something way more interesting. It's really fascinating. And this is one that's actually alive. And I don't know if you can see that end of it.
Look there, look.
You can see something is moving.
The head's out.
Well, these are bagworm caterpillars inside there, the caterpillar form of a bagworm moth. Look at this. You can see there's the caterpillar, and it's dragging behind it the bag, which is why it's called a bagworm. It's this sort of encasement, and it's got leaves and stems, and with this one's got some heather flowers on it. I mean, it looks absolutely mad, doesn't it? And when it's ready, it starts to climb upwards. When it's ready to metamorphose, it climbs upwards, and then it sticks itself to something, and then it pupates within the case. And that's when things get really interesting.
Fascinating, aren't they?
Oh, they're amazing.
They're like a terrestrial caddisfly. They've got that for protection, obviously, and also for camouflage. But look, come over here, because they pupate inside the case, and clearly they will emerge as a male and a female. Let's take a look at the males first, and we've got a lovely model of one of the males here. So, to all intents and purposes, this looks like a pretty standard, what we call micro moth. It's got the wings, abdomen here, it's got the feathery antennae. Take a look at a real one here, and there you can see it. Those feather antennae are really important. The males, if you remember, need to be super sensitive to pheromones, chemical cues that are given off by the females to attract the males. What about the female? Well, the female mates while she is still inside the case. So she emerges from her pupal case while she's still inside that vegetable case. Okay, then the male has to mate with her. Take a look at this. This is a male mating, and he's mating through the case. The female doesn't emerge. Now, what's interesting about the male is that he has a flexible, inflatable abdomen which is able to stretch out like this. And that means that he's able to mate with the female either through the top of the case, like this, stretching his abdomen. On this one needs to be a little bit more stretchy. Stretching, oh, sorry, mate. I mean, that might be quite painful. But stretching his abdomen all the way down to the reproductive organs of the female down here, or on occasion, he may punch through the bottom of the case. And just before we went live, we were looking into a little container we had with our bagworms, and we saw this. Out of nowhere, look, a male bagworm moth had arrived, and it was mating through the bottom using its inflated abdomen to mate with the female. What about that?
These are mad, aren't they? It gets even madder, it really does. Because, so you've got the female in there, and then the eggs, if I take this off, develop inside her. And then it's thought that she comes out of this, of the case, and then she'll wriggle and writhe around like a maggot. And the reason she does that is to attract a bird to come down and eat her. So the bird, which seems crazy, doesn't it? So the bird eats her and then will poo out the half-eaten maggot, but the eggs are still inside her. They will hatch and live on. So basically, by the bird eating her, it disperses the eggs. Isn't that incredible?
It is incredible. However, we have to put a caveat in here. There are a number of people researching this. Lucy Agas is researching it, a guy called Phil Sterling and John Waters, and they do have contrasting ideas, so more observation needs to be done, because sometimes, as I say, they can mate through the base of the case, and sometimes the female will pupate head down, in which case she can't ever emerge from that case. And it's thought then that the eggs hatch, the female dies, they feed on her whilst they're growing, and then to disperse, they don't use birds, and through that process of going into the bird's mouth and coming out in its feces, they disperse using ballooning. Now, these are spiders. I know these are not caterpillars, but the technique is exactly the same. They spin a thin thread of silk sufficiently long that it can catch the air and act like a kite, and that will move them from one part of the environment to the other. So they are an extraordinary group of moths, 17 species in the UK, successful all over the world. But even now, the most exciting thing about them is we don't really know what's going on. That's going to take more research.
I'll tell you, every day's a school day, isn't it? Because not even you knew very much about
No.
this before today, did you?
No, I'd seen them, I'd looked them up, and when I'd found them glued to the side of my house, and I knew they were called bagworms, and I should have read on. I didn't. And now I've learned this much about them, but knowing there's still more to learn. I mean, I love that, though. The extendable, the inflatable abdomen.
Crazy creatures,
Just so
crazy
good, isn't it?
creatures. Just goes to show how incredible nature can be.